Imagine living in a world where information never stops, where every time you unlock your phone, scroll through your feed, or turn on the news, a new flood of facts, opinions, and ideas crashes into your mind. This is the world we live in today. The real challenge is no longer finding information. It's deciding what to believe. And yet, in the middle of all this uncertainty, most of us cling stubbornly to our beliefs. We fight to prove ourselves right, even when the evidence suggests we may be wrong. We argue, we defend, we shut out voices that challenge us. But what if the real power didn't come from being certain, but from rethinking? In Think Again, organizational psychologist Adam Grant takes us on a journey to explore one of the most underrated skills of our time, the ability to question what we know, to let go of old assumptions, and to rethink. This isn't about doubting yourself endlessly. It's about approaching life with curiosity and humility, and recognizing that the willingness to change your mind is not a weakness. It's your greatest strength. Think of it this way. Even if you spent your entire life learning, you'd barely scratch the surface of all there is to know. Accepting this truth doesn't make us smaller. It makes us wiser. Because once we admit we don't know everything, we open the door to learn more, to discover more, and to grow in ways we never imagined. So as you listen to this summary, I invite you to do more than just hear Adam Grant's ideas. Try them on. Question your own beliefs, challenge your assumptions, and see what happens when you dare to rethink. Because in a world that changes every day, the ability to rethink may just be the most valuable skill you'll ever have. A preacher, a prosecutor, a politician, and a scientist walk into your mind. We live in an age overflowing with information. Whatever you want to know is just a click away, and most of the time, it feels like data is pouring down on us faster than we can process it. This constant flood of knowledge raises an important question. How should we think about our own beliefs? Take Pluto, for example. For decades, school books proudly taught it as the 9th planet in our solar system. Then, new research emerged. Scientists debated, weighed the evidence, and eventually reached a different conclusion. Pluto was reclassified, no longer counted among the planets. What once felt like an undeniable fact was reshaped by new discoveries. This is how knowledge works. It evolves. When we face doubt in life, we often seek a second opinion. If a doctor diagnoses us with an illness, we don't hesitate to check with another doctor. Yet when it comes to our own opinions, objectivity becomes harder. We prefer to believe we're right rather than confront the uncomfortable possibility of being wrong. To understand this better, consider the story of Stephen Greenspan, a man who became the victim of a financial scam. His sister Jane and her friend Gary, a financial advisor, had been investing in a fund that promised unusually high returns. Encouraged by their excitement and their apparent success, Stephen decided to put in 1/3 of his life savings. His friend Anna warned him against it, sensing something wasn't right, but Stephen ignored her caution. At first, his portfolio seemed to grow. Then, overnight, everything collapsed. The so-called fund turned out to be a Ponzi scheme, and Stephen lost nearly everything. Why did Stephen, an intelligent man, fall into such a trap? It all comes down to mindset. Whenever we discuss ideas, we tend to slip into one of 3 modes: preacher, prosecutor, or politician. In preacher mode, we defend our beliefs as sacred. When someone challenges us, we feel compelled to protect and promote our views at all costs. In prosecutor mode, our mission shifts to proving others wrong. We dig in, convinced of our own correctness, determined to win the argument. In politician mode, we seek approval. We tailor our words and actions to persuade others, not because of truth, but because we crave validation and support. The danger of these mindsets is that they rarely leave room for self-reflection. We forget to ask the most important question of all. What if I'm wrong? In Stephen's case, Jane was in preacher mode, insisting the fund was profitable. Anna slipped into prosecutor mode, becoming suspicious of the too-good-to-be-true promises. And Stephen, eager to earn Gary's approval, was thinking like a politician. Trapped by these mental roles, he made a disastrous financial decision. So what's the alternative? The answer lies in adopting the mindset of a scientist. Unlike preachers, prosecutors, or politicians, scientists approach the world with curiosity, not certainty. They form hypotheses, but they don't cling to them. They update their beliefs as new evidence emerges. Their focus is not on being right, but on discovering what is true. That doesn't mean scientists are immune. They too can slip into defending, attacking, or persuading. But their guiding purpose is different. At their best, they remind us not to blindly trust our ideas, not to dismiss others too quickly, but to remain open, humble, and evidence-driven. Many people assume intelligence guarantees good decisions. In reality, it can do the opposite. Research shows that people with higher IQs often become more prone to stereotypes because their brains are better at spotting patterns, even when those patterns don't exist. In other words, the smarter you are, the harder it may be to let go of your beliefs. Admitting your limits, acknowledging that you could be wrong, that's where true wisdom begins. Dances with foes. Most people think of debate as a fight between right and wrong, a contest where one person must win and the other must lose. But that's not what debate truly is. In a formal debate, the real goal is not to crush your opponent, but to open the minds of the audience, to give them reason to consider a perspective they might not have entertained before. After all, an audience often comes in with opinions already formed, and the challenge is to encourage them to rethink. In informal debates, the kind we have in everyday life, the aim shifts. Here, you are not standing before a crowd, but facing a partner, a friend, or a colleague. The objective is not to argue them into submission, but to help them see another layer of truth. Too often, people mistake debate for quarreling. In reality, it is closer to negotiation, a delicate exchange where the outcome depends as much on listening as it does on speaking. Adam Grant compares debate to a dance. Imagine two partners moving across the floor. If one insists on leading aggressively, the dance falls apart. But if both match steps, adjusting to one another's rhythm, the performance flows smoothly. Debate, like dance, is not about domination. It is about coordination, balance, and mutual respect. Research highlights this difference. In one study, a novice negotiator was compared with an expert. The novice came prepared with a long list of reasons, piling on arguments to prove a point. But the expert offered far fewer. Why? Because every argument you give is like handing your partner a thread to pull on. If they find even one weak argument, they can tug at it, unraveling the rest with ease. The more reasons you throw out, the easier it becomes for the other person to dismiss you entirely. Experts take another route. Instead of defending their position endlessly, they ask questions. They probe with curiosity, not with the intent to dominate, but to gather information. Their goal is not to win at any cost, but to reach an outcome that works for both sides. And here lies the secret. When you show you are willing to listen, when you prove that you are open to changing your mind, the other person often mirrors that openness. They too become more willing to hear you out, more willing to rethink their position. This is what separates a genuine truth seeker from a preacher, a prosecutor, or a politician. You're not trying to prove someone wrong, nor are you chasing applause. You're simply trying to uncover what is real, and that makes you far more credible. Research also reveals something powerful. People respect those who admit mistakes. Acknowledging your limits, showing that you're willing to learn, paints you as open-minded and approachable. In fact, in job interviews, candidates who reveal they're aware of what they don't know are often preferred over those who boast about their qualifications. Employers want learners, not know-it-alls. They value humility because humility signals growth. Debating, then, is not about clashing with enemies. It is a dance, one where both partners move in rhythm toward discovery. The more gracefully you step into that dance, the more likely it is that others will follow your lead. Charged conversations. Have you ever found yourself trapped in a heated argument? Maybe about politics, climate change, or the death penalty. These kinds of conversations can quickly become explosive. Voices rise, tempers flare, and before long, both sides stop listening altogether. It feels less like a dialogue and more like two walls crashing into each other. This happens because when we hear an opposing opinion, we instinctively resist the idea of rethinking our own. We cling to the belief that we're right and the other side is wrong. That stubborn certainty is what fuels polarization. Polarization is simply the deep divide that forms when two opposing beliefs stand face to face, unwilling to move. At the heart of this divide lies something psychologists call binary bias. Our brains like to simplify complex issues into neat categories, often into extremes. Yes or no, for or against. Take abortion, for example. A topic filled with moral, medical, and social nuances is often boiled down into two rigid camps, pro or anti. But reality is rarely that simple. The solution lies in embracing complexity. When we recognize that every issue has multiple layers, multiple perspectives, and multiple possibilities, we begin to think more humbly. Suddenly, we notice how much we don't know. We realize there are angles we never considered, information we overlooked, and questions we never asked. This humility doesn't weaken our position. It enriches it. To see how this works in practice, let's step into the Difficult Conversations Lab in New York. Here, psychologist Peter T. Coleman runs an unusual experiment. He pairs up strangers and gives them 20 minutes to debate a divisive topic like abortion. At the end, both participants must decide whether they've found enough common ground to sign a joint statement, which is then published publicly. Before the debate begins, each person reads a news article. Interestingly, the article is not about abortion at all. It might be about gun control, but the version they read can shape the outcome of their conversation. Some versions present both sides of an argument fairly, while others present an issue as complex, with multiple perspectives. The results are striking. When pairs read the balanced version, nearly half manage to agree on at least one point and sign a joint statement. But when pairs read the more complex version, the number of agreements shot up dramatically, close to 100%. The takeaway is clear. Complexity invites cooperation. When people are reminded that issues are rarely black and white, they become more open, more thoughtful, and more willing to find common ground. This lesson is vital in today's world, where information floods us from every direction. If we insist on viewing issues only through a simple yes or no lens, we trap ourselves in conflict. But if we learn to see the shades of gray, to explore the overlooked perspectives, we strengthen our ability to think critically and engage calmly, even with emotionally charged topics. So the next time you enter a heated conversation, remember, it isn't about winning or losing. It's about stepping away from binary thinking, embracing complexity, and finding the courage to rethink. That's not the way we've always done it. The skill of rethinking is not just for individuals. It can be cultivated within groups as well. In fact, for organizations, the ability to rethink can mean the difference between survival and collapse. Companies that build a culture of learning, where curiosity is valued and limits are acknowledged, are far better equipped to innovate, adapt, and thrive. In a true learning culture, people know the boundaries of their knowledge. They accept that there are countless things they don't yet understand, and that humility keeps them open. It makes them eager to try new approaches, to test new ideas, and to keep innovating rather than clinging to the old. Consider the near-tragic experience of astronaut Luca Parmitano. During a spacewalk, he felt water pooling inside his helmet. At first, he thought it might just be sweat, but the amount was far too much. Alarmed, he reported it to Mission Control, which immediately ordered him and his partner back to the spacecraft. As they moved toward safety, the problem worsened. Water kept rising inside his helmet, blurring his vision and threatening to choke off his air supply. By the time they reached the airlock, Luca could barely see or breathe. His partner had to secure the chamber, and only at the last possible moment did Luca manage to remove his helmet, narrowly escaping death. Later, the investigation revealed a leak. And here's the critical part. Luca had noticed droplets of water in his helmet before the spacewalk and mentioned them, but the crew assumed it was just a minor leak from the drinking bag inside the suit. A normal occurrence, nothing serious. They failed to question the assumption. That oversight nearly cost an astronaut his life. NASA learned from this mistake, as it has from others. Even among the most brilliant minds, overconfidence can breed carelessness. When you believe your systems are flawless, you stop questioning. And when you stop questioning, small problems can grow into catastrophic ones. So how do you create a culture of rethinking in your organization? It begins with encouraging people to constantly review their methods, to look at their work not only through their own eyes, but also from the perspective of others. It means asking, what can we improve? What needs to be updated? Many companies promote the idea of best practices. Teams are encouraged to share them, and employees follow them for presentations, client communication, or day-to-day tasks. Best practices are useful, but they come with a hidden danger. Once a method is labeled as best, people stop questioning it. They rarely pause to ask, does this still work? Could this be improved? The truth is, best practices can produce quick results, but they rarely foster long-term learning. They make us efficient, but they can also make us complacent. Performance-driven thinking focuses only on completing the task with proven strategies, without asking if those strategies are still relevant. And once habits harden, even outdated processes continue unchallenged. The strongest strategies, however, are built on both thinking and rethinking. They emerge from people willing to question, to innovate, and to dive deeper into problems with creativity. That's why the best organizations don't just chase results. They nurture a culture where employees are encouraged to evaluate, experiment, and rethink over and over again. Because in the long run, rethinking isn't just a skill, it's survival. Escaping tunnel vision. Many of us grow up with a single plan carved into our minds. Perhaps when you were just 7 years old, You decided you would become a doctor, and from that moment, every academic choice you made pointed in that one direction. But what happens if that plan fails? What if life throws the unexpected your way? For most people, the idea of rethinking their path never even crosses their minds. They create one plan, cling to it, and let it define the course of their lives. When a strategy fails, our instinct is not to change it, but to try harder. We double down instead of stepping back. Yet what we really need in those moments is a plan B. Research shows this is especially true for entrepreneurs. But why do people resist considering alternatives? Why do they cling so tightly to a failing path? One powerful reason is the sunk cost fallacy. This is the tendency to keep investing time, money, and energy into something simply because we've already invested so much, even when the evidence screams that it's not working. It's a quirk of human psychology. We don't want to admit that we were wrong, so we continue, hoping to somehow prove our past decisions right. Sticking to a decision feels simple, even comforting. Over time, it can become part of our identity. Imagine a college student who chooses to major in English because they love reading. But soon they realize they have no real passion for writing. Instead of switching majors, they keep going, afraid to change course. They've already committed, so they push through, even though the path no longer excites them. But here's the truth. You don't have to finish something just because you started it. You are allowed to pivot. You are allowed to choose again. The more open you remain to new possibilities, the more growth you invite into your life. Yet so many people never give themselves that chance. They lock themselves into choices made years earlier, ignoring the person they've become since then. It's important to rethink your plans and commitments regularly. What you wanted 10 years ago may no longer fit who you are today. Don't let sunk costs trap you into a life you no longer enjoy. Students often fall into this cycle, planning their present based on a career they imagined at 20, only to find themselves deeply unfulfilled at 30. The result is frustration, burnout, and a sense of being stuck. The lesson here is simple. Don't be afraid to let go. Don't be afraid to try something new. Especially when it comes to careers, flexibility can be your greatest strength. You might discover later in life that you excel at something you never considered before. And if a strategy isn't working, whether it's a study path, a business idea, or even a job, you can always change it. You are not bound to choices that no longer serve you. Escaping tunnel vision doesn't mean abandoning discipline. It means freeing yourself from the illusion that there is only one road to success. The courage to rethink, to pivot, and to start again. That is what keeps growth alive. Conclusion. At its heart, Think Again is a book about humility, curiosity, and courage. It reminds us that the greatest strength is not in always being right, but in being willing to question ourselves, to let go of certainty, and to rethink what we know. We've seen how our minds often slip into the roles of preacher, prosecutor, or politician, defending, attacking, or persuading without ever pausing to reflect. We've learned how debates can be more like dances, where listening matters more than winning. We've discovered the danger of binary bias, where we reduce complex issues into yes or no boxes, and the power that comes from embracing nuance and complexity. We've explored how organizations thrive when they build a culture of learning, and how individuals grow when they resist tunnel vision, break free from sunk costs, and remain open to change. The lesson is clear. Intelligence alone is not enough. What truly defines wisdom is the ability to unlearn, to relearn, and to update our beliefs as the world unfolds. The strongest people and the most successful organizations are not those who cling hardest to their ideas, but those who adapt, question, and keep their minds open to possibility. Rethinking is not weakness. It is resilience. It is the courage to say, I might be wrong, but I'm willing to learn what's right. And in a world that is constantly changing, that mindset is not just useful, it is essential. Thank you for listening to this summary of Think Again, The Power of Knowing What You Don't Know by Adam Grant. If this book has sparked new thoughts or challenged your old ones, then it has already done its job. For more audiobook summaries that inspire growth and fresh perspectives, don't forget to subscribe to Audiobook 101. Stay curious, stay open, and above all, never stop rethinking.